Thanks, Keith. And once again, I handle the a team here in Tampa, Florida for OpenText. There are 8 account execs that I manage, and we cover North America for any organizations that are typically $1 billion or less for OpenText. Keith, next slide. So in today's world, what is happening is that your margins are continuing to get squeezed. And being able to always ask to do more with less has been the mantra for many, many years. Yet sometimes you just can't do more because everything that you're doing is maximum capacity, because there isn't a good way to automate some of the things that you do. So once again, organizations continue to look for a better way to skin the cat, so to speak, and a more efficient way of doing things. And what you'll see revealed to you in the next 30 minutes or so should open your eyes and hopefully give you some food for thought. Next slide, Keith. Okay, Keith, let me turn things over to you.
Great, thanks again, Rick. So a segue into what Rick was just saying there. A lot of processes, you're at max capacity because a lot of your processes are still manual and very labor intensive. So we look at it, we start thinking to ourselves, you know, whether it be yourself as an employee of the organization or whether it be your colleagues that you work with, if the resources within a company are going around and thinking to themselves, hey, let me go find the next task that I need to start working on, and they need to really think about what's on their task list, or they manually manage a task list, really the process that they're running should be telling them this is your next task. So it should be very proactive in telling. So if you're thinking, what is my next task? Your process should be telling you what your next task is. And then when you start talking about tasks, you know, when you're doing work, obviously there's some content associated with that, whether that be a paper-based document, whether that be an email or a PDF or what have you. Again, if you're thinking things or your colleagues are thinking, let me find that document that I need, let me go search for it, let's find out whose desk it's on or whose email it's sitting in. Really, your document should be finding you at the appropriate time. So your process needs to be telling you what you need to be working on next, and your document should be finding you when it's time to work or associate yourself with that document. Really, this requires a change in mindset. I mean, people are so used to being able, having to manually manage their task list and manually through email or again through a paper form pass documents around. It really requires a change in mindset and approach. And it really is digital transformation. So we're going to use the term digital transformation throughout this presentation. And then we're going to reveal the acronym. We always know we need a new acronym, so the acronym we've created called ADI. So really when you look at digital transformation, we're really looking at marrying content with process and people. As I've talked through this slide here, I've talked about resources, employees, colleagues, being the people, and then managing that content, getting that document delivered to them and through an effective process that's telling them when they need to work on something. So content plus process plus people. And we feel that's a key part of every organization. It's obvious that people, process, and information is what drives businesses. And you want to be able to merge those together, have those work very collaboratively together to increase your business performance and ultimately gain a competitive advantage. So there's a great synergy in bringing people, process, and information together and making it work seamlessly. And we feel that digital transformation drives business transformation. Again, as you look at your organization and you're thinking to yourself, hey, there's a lot of areas here for optimization, there's a lot of areas here for bringing more efficiencies to my business, ultimately you're looking at driving business transformation. Again, changing the mindset, and digital transformation is what drives that. You're shifting from focusing on just risk and cost to adding value, so you don't have to manage your task list and find documents and content. You're managing it through associating with business processes. And that allows you to control the life cycle. Control the life cycle of the content by capturing, classifying, and applying retention policies without negatively impacting end users. This is very important when you're looking at compliancy and you're looking at process efficiency, et cetera. And an information governance program woven into the fabric of the solutions to accelerate the user adoption. Very important here as you start looking at process automation, and as the tagline of this webinar is process automation or process improvement, doing more with less. It's very important that that's woven into the fabric of your solution. And what I mean by that is if you only have half of a process automated and half of it still manual, you're still not really achieving the benefit of process automation. So it's really getting it woven into the fabric of your organization and being able to move through that maturity curve that shows really efficient processes and management of content. So what is digital transformation? We look at digital transformation as a process whereby you're transforming your business by automating and improving manual processes, as I've mentioned on previous slides, digitizing your key assets, and integrating with mission-critical systems. And for the next handful of minutes, we're going to drill down on this ADI, this automate, digitize, and integrate. We feel that as you look at varying content, process, and people, it really requires these three key components. Automate being the automation of your process workflows from end to end. And again, not having a half of a process automated, but having the entire process automated, no matter how simple the process is or how complex it is. And I'll give some examples of simple ones and complex ones as we go through this exercise. Digitize. Just because a document is in an email or in a PDF in an email does not necessarily mean it's digitized. Yeah, it's in a digital format, but when we say digitize, we're talking about taking all form of documents, whether it's paper, electronic documents, data from back-end applications, bringing all that together in a digital fashion where those various pieces of content are married with the process or carried through the process, and again, provide the complete process and content, not just part of the process, not just part of the content. So getting that digitization, which we'll talk a little bit more about the components that make that up. And then ultimately, the data that you're dealing with, whether it be the process data, whether it be the content, or just whether it be key data elements, that needs to be integrated into your mission-critical systems, whether that be an ERP, a CRM, procure-to-pay solution, et cetera, is integrating that data as part of your process into the back-end systems. And we're all very familiar and very used to I have a document here and it has some data on it, and then I go manually turn to one of my other systems and I manually key that data into it. We're very used to that paradigm, but with ADI we're talking about a paradigm shift where there's no reason with the technology provided these days that as you capture and digitize documents, you can extract key information and have that automatically integrated into your back-end systems. Manual rekeying is just error-prone and leads to more opportunity to not have a process automated and to have problematic issues when you're dealing with a content. So let's drill down into digitize and integrate. Again, I touched a little bit on it. Automate, when we talk about BPM or BPMS, business process management software, is leveraging the technology. The technology now exists today where you can leverage, and we're not just talking about human workflow, we're really talking about a business process from start to finish, from the time a process is initiated to managing it through humans from a workflow perspective, as well as the various touch points in a process includes your mission-critical business applications. So using BPMS software to automate a business process from end to end, including humans and systems. And how do you do that? You start by defining your business processes. You need to define your business processes, improving them, and identifying how they should be measured and what information is most important to the end user. When we start talking about automation, we're not just talking about, I have a process today, let's just automate this process, and we're done, and we go to move on to the next process. Process automation is also about process improvement. Again, the tagline for this webinar, process improvement, doing more with less, is define your business process, but also define the key metrics associated with that business process and track that. And we'll talk a little bit more later in the conversation about tracking, monitoring, measuring, and reporting. That's a very key part of automation because when you automate a process, you then want to be able to improve it. So as you automate it, now when there's not so much manual process moving around, the automation allows you to track key performance indicators, like how long was this document sitting in somebody's task list. I won't say inbox, but task list. So we've automated the process. Tracking stuff like that, or a lot of times a process and content may not be going to an individual, but maybe to a group. Like let's say I'm an insurance company and I have claims processors. A lot of times a process may end up in a group where a certain step in the task could be one of 10 different individuals. If I have key performance indicators automated into my process, I can see that the turnaround time for that group is low. It's maybe not because they're inefficient. Maybe the group's too small for the amount of business that you have going through it. So being able to measure that is very important from a process automation. And we always like to point out that BPM, business process management, is not a methodology. It's really a discipline. Again, the discipline of looking at your organization and taking your processes and automating those so that you follow the company's strategic direction. It should follow your mission statement and what you're trying to drive from an automation perspective. And once that process is clear, start designing and developing the system so it supports your company's strategic direction. I want to give one example here, just a sample, and this is actually, we'll talk a little bit more about OpenText Process Suite. This was actually a live demo that we will be providing in the future, where we've taken a process like an expense approval. And you see here in this graphical process, which is actually runs at runtime, you go through where you enter an expense that needs approval. It goes to a department manager based on which department this person works for. And then that department manager can make a decision. Am I going to approve it and keep moving along here to the right? Am I going to reject it? And if I reject it, fill out a rejection form and state why I rejected it. Or maybe I want to go back to the submitter and say, I need more info. And, here's the type of information that I'm looking for. And assuming it goes through the process here of approved, there's some more rules here. So we talk about rules. Is it budgeted or not? If it's budgeted, then we start looking at the value of that expense and who it needs to go to next based on the dollar value. And ultimately, it needs to end up over here where it's finally approved and it's entered into, in this example, Oracle Financials. Could be SAP, could be whatever your ERP system is of choice. But being able to, again, when we talk about integrate, ADI, automate, digitize, and integrate, this shows an example of an automation of an expense, but there's also content flowing through this that was captured. It was an expense report that needed to be passed along with this. And in some cases where the department manager looked at and said, I need more info, you sent in the expense report, but you didn't send in your scanned receipts. So I need that as well. So we have content associated with it. It's moving through this process. And then ultimately we talk about integration. And on the right here, we see enter into Oracle Financials. We're going to integrate that. No manual rekeying of data. One other key thing to note here when you look at automation, these are all, you see little people icons here on each one of these. As you build a process, you're also identifying who is associated with a certain activity in a process. And this could be a single person, individual, or it could be a group, as I mentioned before, in a group of 10 processing claims as an example. And those roles can be identified here when you're actually modeling the process. So again, it's part of process automation. It's also bringing in a lower code solution to being able to build these processes so that it's not just a technical IT developer writing code, but your business analyst being able to go and identify the roles associated with activities. Now when this thing runs at runtime, it shows up in somebody's task list. Again, one of my opening slides said I shouldn't be asking what's next on my task list. My process should be telling me, here, this has just been assigned to you because it's at that step of the process and you are associated with that activity. Oops, wrong button. And that's one example I used there of an expense report. As you see here, different square green boxes popping up. This is just so much more that BPM can be used for. Very complex. So the expense approval was a simple process. Some more complex processes could be claims management and insurance, a very complex process. Could be a mortgage from a financial banking perspective. Supply chain optimization from a manufacturing perspective. HR case management. If you look at some of the commonality across any business, no matter what industry you're in. You talk about HR, you talk about accounts payable, accounts receivable. All those types of processes can be automated, digitized, and integrated using digital transformation. So I've talked about automation, but along the way I've also talked about how the digitized component comes in there. This gives a little more deeper dive into that. As when you're looking at business process management and business process improvement, again, we don't feel it's just about the process. We feel it is the content as well. So you've got to digitize your content. What is the key content of your company, whether it be accounts payable invoices or HR documents, or again, in an insurance example, a claims document, or a mortgage broker, mortgage loan paperwork. Getting all of those documents in the beginning of the process digitized and into a content management system so that you have an electronic record that's tied to a process, can be tracked, monitored, measured, and reported on, as well as start looking at compliance. And these are your business assets. Those assets need to be transformed into a digital format, if not already done, and then stored with proper search metadata and record retention rules that apply to your business. Very important to be able to get these documents, get this content stored, and it can be multiple versions of the document. The document may start as one version, but as you go along, there may be changes to the document, obviously collaboration, etc. Storing that in a content management that can easily be searched and have record retention rules applied. As part of digitizing content, there's a lot of content that's on those documents, and the OCR capture capability these days is very streamlined. It's very integrated into content management, and it allows you to extract from your digital documents that key data. And possibly, if you've got privacy issues, whether it's PII, personally identifiable information, or what have you, you may need to redact that for privacy purposes. So you black out certain key data elements once you've extracted them. So if you think about this as, I've captured a document, let's say it has my social security on there, it's an HR document, you extract my social security number, you put that into your ERP system, but then maybe you redact it, you block that out when you store the document in your content management, so somebody else that views that document that has security and needs to view the document, maybe they don't have the level of security where they need to see my social security number, so I redacted that. But in the meantime, I've extracted it and stored it in my ERP system for other processing purposes. And that's not the end of it. Your assets are in a digital format. They must be utilized. Again, capture key data, move it through an automated workflow, and marry the content with necessary systems. As you extract that key data, that data from those documents can be used as you pass it from one task to the next in a business process. And here's a little pictorial of the capture challenge. To really automate your process, including the capture from start to finish, you've got to acquire the document, you've got to convert key data elements to text that can be used to integrate, and then you look at how you're going to archive that, how you're going to put it into a human workflow, as well as a process to integrate it into your back-end systems. And your picture at the end of the day, after you've gone through ADI, digital transformation, you look at the electronic capture, you've got the OCR documents with full text for search. You can print, scan, copy as part of your workflow, and then you look to the left here. That could have came in via fax, some type of API integration, an email, what have you. You've gone through the capture process. You've classified the documents and separated it out as necessary, extracted key information, and you've stored that document, again, possibly with redaction. And then you've formatted and got it ready to go into a back-end application like an ERP system. And we've kind of already mentioned this from a content perspective. When you're storing that digitized document after you've extracted key data and you've integrated it into your other mission-critical line of business applications, you're going to use the content and manage the content. And all key elements of enterprise content management for example, the OpenText Content Suite product line is being able to do all these capabilities of sharing, workflow, search, capture, metadata, perms, version, transform, dispose, archive, collaborate, etc. Use the content, manage the content, all part of a process. And we touched on the integrate. It's one thing if you look at some examples of companies that have automated processes in the past where they have married process and content, they've left off the third piece, which is integrate. And again, with the technology given these days of being able to take key data and extracting them from documents, or it could be data that I entered into a form as part of my business process, being able to integrate that into my mission critical back-end systems so that I don't have to re-key data. You know, the relatable content can be programmatically displayed, and then you look at integrating your content into your enterprise content system and having that end-to-end integration, and that could include system to system, or it could be human to human, or it could be human to system to human. All parts of this integrated as part of my process to, again, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, to have a fully automated process to really achieve that digital transformation that I need to make my business more effective. Again, process improvement, doing more with less. If I can automate, digitize, and integrate, I can do a lot more workload than what I can do with manual processes, which means that 10-person department, maybe it doesn't need to grow to 20 people or 12 people. Maybe that 10-person department can still grow with the business because I'm automating, digitizing, and integrating, achieving digital transformation. I can do more with those same 10 people than I could before. And here's just a little pictorial about processing content integrated from legacy systems, internet portals, CRMs, etc. This is one of my favorite slides. It shows bringing it all together. When you look at the left blue silos, the intake management we call it, it's how the data gets in, whether it be a physical mail, whether it be web, email, fax, whether it be a data entry form or a legacy file from one of my ERP legacy systems, a print stream. It could be a phone call or a smartphone, etc. Being able to go through an OCR and get that data into the process. And then a lot of times that intake of that document is what actually, or that content is what actually triggers the business process. So then I am triggering the various components of business process management. You know, work queues. You know, what, again, going back to the question is, what do I need to work on next? It's going to tell me through my work queue what is assigned to me as an individual or as a member of a group, what tasks are out there to be worked on. Being able to measure those activities in a business process and report on them. Apply business rules. We saw in the example of the expense approval, we had business rules in there. You know, what do I do based on certain conditions, based on the data that came from the content? Customized searching, and I won't go through all these, you can read them yourself, but you know, dynamic routing. Delegation of authority, that's a key component. You know, if John Doe is the one supposed to work on this task next, but he's on vacation, using BPM technology, he's probably done a delegation or a proxy and said, hey, for this period of time, send this to Mary Smith because I'm on vacation for this week. And those types of things, the collaboration, the automation from a business process, being able to store that content into an enterprise content management with record retention, customized searches, access controls, versioning, legal hold, auto classification, etc. Then integrating that into your back-end systems, your CRMs, your ERPs, your third-party applications. And again, we talk about enterprise content management, we'll also talk about digital asset management. All of this has an underlying theme of reporting and analytics because at the end of the day, we need to be able to report on the key performance indicators and analyze the data and find out where there's opportunity for process improvement. And then we see on the outside of this slide here, everything from on-premise to cloud, everything from desktop to mobile. The technology is there to achieve this, and the slide, the title of the slide, bringing it all together, is very capable of happening today. We like to use this slide. We talk about ADI, automate, digitize, and integrate. We like to look at this slide and say, okay, the life before ADI. You look at these various 4 screens up here. They're completely different looking screens, and from a usability perspective, it makes the human experience very difficult. I need to know everything about most all my systems in my organization to be able to do a process from end to end. And I've got to be able to deal with any type of media, whether it be phone, mail, fax, email, web, etc. And then I need to interact with various different people that have different expertise in my different systems. It's very informal from a task and processing perspective. I duplicate, I rekey data constantly. The process is not necessarily consistent, so the execution and prioritization may vary based on who's working on a certain task on a certain day. Lack of control over the system of business events. And then poor visibility. That's always a key one because when I got all these different systems and I'm putting data in different places from different content, interacting with different people, and they're not together from a digital transformation perspective, the visibility of that process from start to finish is next to impossible. I really can't see that process from start to finish. At any point in time, I cannot say, where is this in my process? And then there's no way to improve the process. You know, you can debate that, say, well, there's always opportunity to improve a process regardless, but when you look at it from a complete end-to-end process, there's no real way to improve it because you don't know where all the bottlenecks are. And again, we already know it's paper-based. Life after ADI, you start looking at consistency, auditability, compliance, the automation, balancing of workload. As I use the example of a 10-person claims processing office, where you know that a certain activity could go to any one of those 10 people because they're all skilled in processing that claim. It's just who's available next. So doing workload balancing. Fewer user screens. It should really be a lot simpler from a human experience perspective with shared information. And then when exceptions occur, you got control over it with the end-to-end visibility. You can see the process from start to finish. You know where, every step along the way, you know where in the process you are currently working and where that's at right now. So if you're a manager and you need to go find out who's working on a certain task and where they're at with that task, what content they're dealing with on that process, you can easily see that from a visibility perspective through the BPM technology. And that allows you to have continuous improvement. Again, looking at it from a reporting and key performance indicators, continuous improvement, always opportunity to improve processes. And then you've got all your key content. These are key assets to your organization, business assets, and you now have that electronic, you've captured it all, and you've got it stored in search and retrieval capabilities. So I have talked a lot about the ADI part of it, but we feel a key part of the ADI part is the track, monitor, measure, and report. And I've talked about this as being able to have those metrics recorded as you go through a process, knowing where you're at in the process, knowing how much time you're spending in each activity in the process, knowing how much workload is being pushed to a certain role, whether it be an individual or a group, being able to report on that and do analysis, having a dashboard of your various key performance indicators where you can see any areas where there are opportunities for improvement. And then measuring those metrics and being able to improve on them. So we really feel from a value perspective, the value of ADI is decreased processing times for better turnaround. That's obvious. I can do more with less. I can repurpose or lower headcount. Some organizations, based on the economy these days, are trying to lower headcount. They've got too many people working because it's manual, and if I can either lower the headcount or in some cases maybe just repurpose the headcount for more strategic tasks and processing, the better my business is going to be, the more effective my business is going to be. Having full exposure to your day-to-day processes with complete visibility, that is so important to be able to view any process, view any content, know where it's at without having to go run around your office and try to find the person or the content associated with a certain activity. And the fourth bullet here, allowing your business to grow. I mean, hopefully your business is being successful and you're trying to continually grow it. And you want to grow it without needing more people. So if you can automate your processes, achieve digital transformation, which is ultimately business transformation, that allows your business to grow without having to add more people. And then having your key performance indicators available in real time, so you don't have to wait to tomorrow or next week to find out that something is a problem. You can deal with it immediately because you've got this information at your disposal, at your fingertips. And then all your assets, your content is available on demand. You don't have to search the office, desk, emails. You know, I think a lot of companies these days are getting more and more away from paper, but again, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, just because I have a document that was emailed to me, it's in my email. So if you're my manager and you need to come find that and you can't find me and it's stuck in my email, that's not good. You need to have it available on demand as part of your content management solution. I'm going to pause. We got a question and answer session at the end, but I was going to pause for a second and see if Rick, if anybody put anything in the chat window, asked any questions that we would want to answer now before we jump into the next.
Keith, I have one, and that is the question is, most companies have a need to automate processes in many different departments. In Clear Cadence experience, where do you see most companies starting? I mean, what area is there a bigger bang for the buck in certain areas other than other areas?
That's a great question, Rick. You can look at this from a departmental versus an enterprise strategy, and different organizations tackle the problem differently. Some organizations want to go right for the gusto and say, okay, I'm going to take my most mission-critical process that's highly visible and try automating that across the enterprise. We kind of discourage against that because what you want to do when you embrace a digital transformation is you want to show some quick wins, some quick efficiencies in automating some processes and being able to improve those processes. So we feel more companies are successful in the very beginning from a learning curve and maturity perspective of going at it from a departmental perspective. So you're not going after, say, in an insurance business, the claims processing. Maybe you're going to your HR, and again, you're automating an expense approval process that maybe is very labor-intensive today. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks very much. And that's all that's in the chat window currently.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I wanted to quickly talk about Clear Cadence and what we can do, and then Rick's going to jump in from an OpenText perspective. Clear Cadence has been in the BPM business our entire life. That's what we focus on. We are focused on business process improvement, business process automation, and ultimately using tools like business process management. We have a very strong relationship and partnership with OpenText. Many of our senior management and owners came from OpenText. Having worked with various the OpenText technologies, whether it be the process suite or some of the other older BPM technologies like Metastorm and Case 360. We are very proud of this partnership with OpenText and see it as very strategic long term because OpenText, they understand digital transformation. They have the product and technology, whether it be capture, content, or process, where you can do digital transformation, marrying your content, people, and process. So our partnership with OpenText is very strong and across the North Americas and even overseas as well. You see some of the customers that we've partnered with OpenText on. Again, from a Clear Cadence perspective, at the end of the day, we believe everything is a process, not to leave out content or people. A process always has content, a process always has people involved. So having better processes results in a more efficient and effective business. Our goal, our bias, if you will, is to make your business successful in achieving digital transformation. And we offer several different types of projects to an organization to deliver on business process improvement. And you see a list here. I won't run through those. Just briefly on our delivery methodology, the bottom bullet here kind of talks about it. If you're familiar with methodologies, an agile and a waterfall, but we also have what we call a wagile, which is kind of a mix of waterfall and agile. That's where when you start talking about a business process automation project, you really need to take some bits of a waterfall methodology and understand those as-is processes, which means you establish, initiate, and collaborate and define what those as-is processes are. And then you transition into more of an agile methodology to where now you start defining the to-be processes. And as you're defining those to-be processes, you're not doing this in, say, something like a Visio or something like that. You're defining these to-be processes in a tool like Process Suite. And as you're doing that, you're actually developing the solutions. You're constructing and implementing as you go along. So a little waterfall up front to get going, to understand your as-is and where your areas, to Rick's question, understanding where maybe a high visibility but a lower risk opportunity is to start your digital transformation. Let's identify that, and then let's start constructing and implementing that while we're also identifying other opportunities for process automation. This kind of states the same thing as the breakdown of the phases. I left it in here just so any viewing this recording later could read through this, but it talks about the various steps and what happens at each step. And for our delivery, we can engage with the customer in many different aspects. The left side here is turnkey, to where you act as our subject matter expert because you understand your business, and we come in from everything from project management to architecture to business analysis to development to implementation and post-production support. Complete turnkey type solution, automating some of your processes. If I jump to the far right side, where it's customer driven, the customer says, no, we want to own all this, we just want you to be our mentors. We come in there, whether it be a technical mentor, whether it be an architect mentor, or what have you, and it's all customer driven. The one we see more often than not is the middle one, the joint skills transfer. You ultimately want to own your process automation because it's so strategic in your digital transformation. I shouldn't just say process automation. You want to own that long term because it is key to your business. So we come in and work jointly with you, and we're doing skills transfer as we are going along in the project. And maybe it's not just one project. Maybe we start off with one project where we're the majority of the development, and you're in a learning mode. As we move through subsequent projects, you take on more and more of a responsibility, and we phase ourselves out of a job, if you will. And that's our ultimate goal, is to have you achieve digital transformation, have you on your way to a full maturity of digital transformation, and as we go along, we phase ourselves out. As part of that, we have a thing called, actually, let me back up. So ClearStart is an offering Clear Cadence also has, because a lot of times companies look at it, and even to Rick's question about, well, where do I start, is ClearStart is a program we have where a lot of times it's about educating people on what BPM is, what digital transformation is, kind of what this webinar at a very high level is getting down into more details. Okay, Keith, you've talked about BPM, you've talked about automate, digitize, and integrate. I need some more discrete examples. And that's where we have an offering where we come in and we help baseline your key performance indicators. Find where is your best area of process improvement. From an architecture perspective, how would you fit this into your overall systems architecture, et cetera, and as is in 2B processes you see here. So ClearStart is an offering that takes this webinar down to a more granular level and helps identify for you to be able to sell and identify for your upper management what this project would be, how it's not just a project, what this journey would be starting today, and how I traverse across the journey and start seeing success. And last slide here from a Clear Cadence perspective is, this is our focus. We are focused on ADI. We have many professionals across the North Americas who have been doing this for many, many years. Proven track record of delivering solutions, and again, your success is important to us. We provide recommendations based on your needs, maturity, and budget. And we want to, efficient use of your staff. As I go back to the how we engage slide, your staff may be so overworked that right now you want to minimize their impact, so you want to do turnkey, or you want to be very involved in the process. And again, I usually find middle of the road. And value-driven, process-centric. Find the right path to support your business more efficiently. Finding those low-hanging fruit, if you will, those key processes that are lower risk, high visibility, and can really bring benefit to your business, because that's just going to be like a snowball. Once management starts seeing that you can do so much more with less through automation and digitization and integration, there's going to be more and more opportunity to grow that. And with that, Rick, I'm going to turn it back over to you and talk a little bit about OpenText and the great line of products you have.
Yes, thank you very much, Keith. I appreciate that. So you can go right to the next slide, Keith. That'd be great. Thank you. So for those of you that are not familiar with OpenText, here's just a couple of fun facts. We are a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ as well as the Toronto Stock Exchange. Last year's our revenue was $1.9 billion, so we'll break the $2 billion mark this year. And we have over 100,000 customers, and maybe more impressive, it's 100 million users use OpenText in some way, shape, or form. We are partners with all of the large ecosystem providers. That would be SAP, Oracle, and Microsoft. And today there's almost 9,000 employees at OpenText with our recent acquisition of Recommind, as well as some of the HP divisions. Next slide, Keith. So with OpenText, we are really about helping organizations break down the silos. When I talk about that, I'm talking about a complete digital transformation. So you have applications, you have systems of records that all speak to one another. Today, we have focused in on the business process management area, but we also have other areas that we help our clients with, such as enterprise content management, the customer experience, which would be handling all of your digital assets as well as your website. And then we get into looking at what other applications that you might have that we can build transformation platforms around. So breaking down the silos, I know at one point in time you all bought best of breed applications, but the problem you're having today is they don't speak to one another. So we can certainly meet and talk about that over the next couple of weeks. Next slide. So today it was all about doing more with less, and you heard Keith really talk about the Process Suite platform. And the Process Suite platform is really geared for process automation and case management. It really accelerates time to value. And it combines the power of highly scalable process platforms for coding developers, as well as the ease of use of a low-code development platform for your business analysts. Next slide, Keith. So the new thing that we have with our Process Suite 16 is something called entity modeling. And with entity modeling, it's a faster way to actually develop the applications. And also, it introduces an intuitive way of modeling your business domains, guiding your analysts through the navigation of the domain model. So I'm going to let Keith talk a little bit more about entity modeling when I pass it back to him, but that is available in Process Suite 16. Next slide.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so back to you to go through the value of what I just talked about.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. The entity modeling is you start looking at time to market and you're realizing the value of the automation capabilities. Entity modeling just takes that even one step further. So you're not going to your IT department and explaining to them what it is that you have from an entity perspective. And an entity could be, an example of an entity is an expense report. And another example of an entity is a claims, if I'm in the insurance business, or a loan application in a mortgage business. That is an entity, and there's attributes associated with those entities. In the past, the typical model was you went to your IT department and they went and wrote code and did stuff in databases to be able to capture those entities and be able to put those into applications. Now, with entity modeling, it's a faster speed of developing the solution because you're actually going in there and just like you would create a form, like an Adobe PDF form that somebody would fill out, like a loan application, you could actually model that entity in the tool in Process Suite, and then that object is then reused through applications. And you can do that from a business analyst perspective and not from an IT coding. So it's less complexity for line of business modelers, easier maintenance as things change. You have more attributes. As we go through more compliance and regulations, there's always things you want to add to, say, an application for a loan, et cetera. Being able to maintain those become a lot easier in entity modeling. And the faster integration. Those entities are tied then directly into your back-end applications, so it's a faster integration of systems of record and very intuitive way to model business solutions. Again, if you look at entity modeling, you're not talking about going to some database and trying to create a bunch of fields or on a screen or in a database. You're talking about being able to model it in something like a forms editor that describes what are the attributes of the entity. Very, very key differentiator for Process Suite, and it's a very valuable, quicker time to market development methodology. So we talked about so as Rick and I have spoke now from both an ADI perspective as well as from an OpenText and Clear Cadence perspective. How do I start? Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's embracing and implementing ADI or overarching the whole thought process of digital transformation, changing my mindset of how I deal with people, processes, and content. And it's an ongoing journey. It's not a destination. And again, as I mentioned, let's identify those few processes that are maybe some quick wins that have high visibility and show, and then it snowballs into it. It becomes that journey. Again, not a destination. And it does start with identifying your as-is processes, and then ultimately the journey continues into your to-be processes when you're actually using the modelers and the entity modeling and the process modeling and building your to-be processes that are actually then implemented into an application solution. I've had a few slides here. I'm going to go over these real quickly. We talked about this earlier with one of the questions. BPM is a departmental strategy. It's a good entry point. It allows you some quick wins. You can start understanding how you capture key metrics and what those key metrics can do for you, because you still might be scratching your head going, okay, I know some key metrics, but from a BPM perspective, what are the types of things you typically capture? Duration between activities within a process flow, how long they're sitting in each activity, how each group or a work group or individual is affecting a certain activity. What are those metrics? Because again, those are the things that I can improve. If I can do more with less, I need to improve those and have better time of processing for my various business processes. And then start by developing simple to moderate workflows. We kind of use a scale, a simple, moderate, and complex scale. You don't necessarily want to start with your most complex process, because it's going to be a longer time to market and just achieve some success and show some wins. And then evaluate your improvements. Compare your metrics from pre-ADI to post-ADI. So building from a departmental strategy to an enterprise one, which transitions us into this, is then you start getting into the enterprise, something more complex, on-demand, case management. You start talking about insurance claims, you start talking about mortgage loans. Your core business is a lot of it deals around case management or complex processes. Those are things more from an enterprise strategy, and you need to really have a good clarity on the business direction, the alignment of your resources. You have to have a significant discipline and efficiency in your daily operations, and end users are involved to make those changes. So you see those kind of bullets is what you need to account for when you start getting to an enterprise strategy, which is why you don't typically want to start there. You want to start departmental. And with that, Rick, I think we are at a point where I think we've kind of covered all the topics here, and I think if we have any questions in the chat window, we can run through those.
We had one in the chat window that came in after, Keith, but I think you covered it, and it had to do with an organization that has a lot of processes but believes that most of them are broken, and so they were wondering if Clear Cadence could help in assisting, fixing the broken processes, and how you'd go about doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's identifying where they're broken at. Where an example of a broken process may be you think you have a process automated, but really what you've done is you've got two halves of a process that are not, that don't work well together. So anytime you have a missing link in a process, then that process is not truly end-to-end with complete visibility and control and being able to measure and report on it. So what you want to do is you want to identify where those missing links are that are causing problems and be able to correct those. And that is a subset of doing an as-is and a to-be model. As-is is identifying where those missing links are, and a to-be, let's identify where we can correct those missing links and make this a complete process.
Great, thanks, Keith. So just wanted to wrap things up. To once again, thanks everybody for your attendance today and your time. We appreciate it very much. We will send out a follow-up email. It will have some contact information both for OpenText and Clear Cadence, and then it will also contain a replay to this webcast today. So everybody have a wonderful day. Once again, thanks, Keith, and take care for now.
Great, thank you.